Okay, so today we're going to dive into something that I think is super relevant to pretty much everyone listening. How to communicate effectively, professionally in English.
Yeah, and this is something that we all struggle with sometimes.
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure that we're coming across the right way, especially when we're in a professional environment.
Totally. And the material you sent over, actually, it's perfect for this because it's from this podcast called Speak English with Confidence.
Oh yeah, Rahul and Priya from Shiv,
Yeah.
official podcast. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, and you know what's cool about this episode specifically is they're building on like basic English conversation they did in their first episode. And now they're like, okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how do you sound professional at work? How do you, kill it in meetings?
Mhm.
They even mentioned they're going to talk about job interviews later on.
Oh wow, that's smart. Yeah, because once you've got the basics down, then you can start to think about how to tailor your language for specific situations.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're going to try to do today, like really pull out those nuggets of wisdom from this episode that can help, our listeners, level up their communication game, be more confident, and ultimately, achieve their goals at work.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
All right. So first impressions, right? They matter so much. So let's talk about greetings and introductions.
Yeah, this is something that Rahul and Priya talk about right at the beginning of the episode, and it's so important. How you greet someone can really set the tone for the whole interaction.
Totally. Like think about it. Instead of just saying, hey, you could say, good morning, how are you today? Or it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just adds that extra layer of professionalism and respect.
And it shows that you're present, you're engaged, you're not just rushing through the interaction.
Right. And they even suggest some other phrases like, I hope you're having a great day, or it's a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah, these are all great ways to just, make people feel comfortable and build rapport from the start.
And then when it comes to introducing yourself, it's important to be clear about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Like, don't just say, hi, I'm John. Give your full name and your job title.
Yeah, Rahul and Priya give some examples like,
Mhm.
hello, my name is Rahul. I'm the marketing manager at XYZ company. Or, hi, I am Priya and I handle customer relations at ABC firm.
It's simple, but it's so effective because it gives people context and helps them understand where you fit in the organization.
Exactly. And once you've nailed those first impressions, then it's all about how you communicate in those day-to-day interactions at work.
Right. So let's talk about how to make requests in a way that's both professional and effective.
This is where things get really interesting because it's all about the subtle ways that we use language to convey our message.
For sure. Like instead of saying, I want a meeting, you could say, could we schedule a meeting, please?
Yeah, that's a great example. It's still assertive, but it's much more polite and respectful.
And that little word, please, goes a long way.
It really does. It shows that you're considerate of the other person's time and that you're not demanding.
Another good example is instead of saying, give me that file, you could say, could you please share that file with me?
Yes, that's much better. It's more collaborative and less like you're giving an order.
And again, those two magic words, could you please, they
Yeah.
really make a difference.
They do. They really soften the request and make it sound more like a question than a demand.
And the podcast even has this little example conversation where Rahul asks Priya, excuse me, Priya, could we schedule a meeting tomorrow? And Priya responds, of course, Rahul, what time would be convenient for you?
Yeah, it's a small interaction, but it perfectly illustrates how polite phrasing can create a much more positive and productive exchange.
And if you think about it, these little choices that we make in our language, they actually contribute to the overall culture of the workplace.
That's a great point. If we're all using polite and respectful language, it creates a more positive and collaborative environment for everyone.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about greetings, introductions, making requests. Now let's move on to another essential skill, handling phone calls professionally.
Oh, phone calls. Those can be tricky, especially when you're trying to project a professional image over the phone.
Totally. But the good news is there are some simple strategies that we can use to make sure that we're coming across the right way.
The first thing is to answer the phone in a professional manner. Rahul and Priya recommend using a phrase like, good morning, this is Priya from ABC Firm. How may I assist you?
Yeah, that's a great way to start because it immediately identifies you and your organization.
And it shows that you're ready to help the caller.
And it's also important to be polite and courteous throughout the conversation.
Yes, even if the caller is being difficult, you need to remain calm and professional.
And if you need to put someone on hold or transfer them, make sure to do it politely and explain what you're doing.
For example, you could say, please hold while I transfer you to the appropriate department.
And if you need to take a message, be sure to get all the necessary information and repeat it back to the caller to confirm accuracy.
And always end the call on a positive note.
Rahul and Priya suggest using a phrase like, "Thank you for calling, have a great day."
Yeah, it's a small gesture, but it can make a big difference in how the caller perceives you and your organization.
Okay, so we've covered greetings, introductions, requests, phone calls. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of professional communication, writing emails.
Email. It's both a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah,
So much of our communication happens over email these days.
it really does, and it's so easy to make mistakes that can damage your professional reputation.
Exactly. So it's crucial to be mindful of both the structure and the language that we use in our emails.
Great, so let's start with the basics. What are the key elements of a professional email?
The podcast breaks it down really nicely. First, you have the subject line, which should be clear, concise, and informative.
Like meeting request or project update.
Exactly. Then you have the salutation, which should be formal and respectful, unless you know the recipient well.
Dear Mr. Sharma or Dear Ms. Jones.
Then you have the body of the email, where you state your purpose clearly and concisely.
And it's important to be polite and professional throughout the email, even if you're delivering bad news.
And finally, you have the closing, where you thank the recipient for their time and sign off professionally.
Like sincerely or best regards.
And of course, you always want to proofread your email carefully before sending it to make sure there are no typos or grammatical errors.
And you know, one thing that Rahul and Priya emphasize is the importance of using professional language in your emails.
Yes, avoid using slang jargon or overly casual language.
And be careful with humor, as it can easily be misinterpreted in writing.
Right, so always err on the side of caution and keep your emails professional and to the point.
Okay, so now let's talk about a situation that can be a bit tricky, handling disagreements professionally in the workplace.
Disagreements are inevitable, right? But it's how we handle them that really matters.
Exactly, because you don't want to damage relationships or create a hostile work environment.
Right, so the key is to be respectful, even when you disagree with someone.
And to focus on finding a solution that works for everyone involved.
Rahul and Priya suggest using phrases like, "I see your point, but I have a different perspective," or "I appreciate your input, but I think we should consider another approach."
These are great ways to acknowledge the other person's opinion while still expressing your own.
And instead of saying, "You're wrong," which can be very confrontational, you could say, "I understand why you think that, but I have some concerns."
It's all about framing your disagreement in a way that's constructive rather than destructive.
And remember, it's okay to agree to disagree sometimes.
As long as you do it respectfully.
The podcast also emphasizes the importance of active listening when you're in a disagreement.
This means really paying attention to what the other person is saying and trying to understand their point of view.
Even if you don't agree with them.
And once you've both had a chance to express your opinions, you can start to brainstorm solutions together.
And if you can't reach a compromise, you can always agree to escalate the issue to a manager or someone else who can help.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground: greetings, introductions, requests, phone calls, emails, disagreements. What's next?
How about presentations? A lot of us have to give presentations at work, and they can be nerve-wracking.
Presentations are so important, right? It's your chance to share your ideas with a group of people and really make an impact.
Yeah, but it's also easy to get flustered and lose your train of thought, especially if you're not well prepared.
Totally. So let's talk about some strategies for giving professional presentations that are both engaging and effective.
First of all, it's important to know your audience.
Who are you presenting to? What are their interests? What are their expectations?
Once you understand your audience, you can tailor your presentation to their needs.
And it's important to have a clear structure for your presentation.
This means having a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Your beginning should introduce your topic and grab the audience's attention.
Your middle should present your main points and support them with evidence.
And your end should summarize your key takeaways and leave the audience with something to think about.
And of course, it's important to practice your presentation beforehand.
This will help you feel more confident and deliver your message more effectively.
Rahul and Priya suggest practicing in front of a mirror or with a friend.
And they also recommend recording yourself so you can see how you come across.
And when you're giving your presentation, be sure to make eye contact with your audience.
And speak clearly and slowly.
And don't be afraid to use visuals like slides or handouts to help illustrate your points.
And most importantly, be yourself.
Let your personality shine through, and your passion for your topic will be contagious.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. What are the key takeaways that our listeners should remember?
I think the most important thing is to be mindful of how you communicate in a professional setting.
Your words and actions can have a big impact on your career.
So always strive to be polite, respectful, and professional.
And remember that practice makes perfect.
The more you practice your communication skills, the more confident and effective you'll become.
And that wraps up our deep dive for today.
We hope you found this episode helpful.
And that you're feeling inspired to level up your professional communication game.
Before you go, we'd love to leave you with a thought.
How might consistently using even a few of these professional communication techniques change how your colleagues see you?
Could they open up new opportunities or help you build stronger relationships at work?
We encourage you to think about it and see what you discover.
Until next time, happy communicating.
See ya.